Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, October the 14th, 2024. On Saturday, Alex Salmond died. So Alex Salmond was former Chief Minister of Scotland, and he was a former head of the Scottish Nationalist Party, and he was an effective communicator who was very good in front of the television cameras, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to look at his chart and to consider, what was going on at the time of his death. I think he died in North Macedonia while, I think, giving a lecture, I think he died during a lunch, but I think he was in North Macedonia to give a lecture. Anyway, he's died, and that's something I'm going to look at. I also want to consider very briefly the horoscopes of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, because there is something happening today which may have an impact on them. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Monday, October the 14th, 2024. Just a reminder that if you like this channel, I would be really grateful if you were to indeed like it. And if you're not subscribed, I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. Anyway, let's look at what's happening today. So here is the horoscope for today. That's Alex Salmond. I think that photograph was taken in 2007. So he is looking a bit younger than he was in his most recent photographs. And turning to today. So this is what's happening today. You can see that the moon, if we set this thing for sort of New York at noon, the moon is at around 12 degrees Pisces. So that means it's a moon in Pisces day. And it doesn't matter where you are, what your time zone is. So the moon is in a water sign, and I suppose that means that we can be supposedly sort of flexible and emotionally fluent, except for the fact that the moon is making a conjunction to Saturn. So that moon conjunct Saturn could put a bit of a damper on things. We might like to express our feelings, but for one reason or another, that might be something that is quite difficult to do. Perhaps we feel it's not appropriate, or we feel that there are outside circumstances which are preventing us from saying, everything that we want to say. And aside from that, we do have a lot of planets in water signs now. We've got Mars in Cancer, Mercury in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, Moon in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. We've got five traditional planets in water signs. Plus we've got Neptune in Pisces. So very watery day. So yeah, there might be a moon conjunct Saturn, which might want to restrict and structure the way we express our feelings. But that doesn't mean to say that the underlying feelings aren't strong. They are very strong. And so there is that moon conjunct Saturn. But on the other hand, we've got Sun trine Jupiter. There's the Sun in Libra, and it's trine Jupiter. It's a very nice aspect, Sun trine Jupiter. In our signs, Sun in Libra, Jupiter in Gemini, there is a sense of enthusiasm, at least mental enthusiasm. We can get excited about things, about ideas, and we might want to do something about it. Although I would have said that turning theory into practice today might be difficult. Yeah, we can have wonderful ideas, but yeah, there might be a lot of water in the sky, but there isn't much fire. And so it may feel that there is just that lack of a spark. So perhaps it's better to have ideas, to have plans, but when it comes to actually executing those plans, that might be difficult. Now, possibly the most important thing happening today is a T-square involving Chiron. You can see this. There is the Sun, and it is square Mars. So that Sun-Mars square, it is exact. And with that Sun-Mars square, two male planets, squaring each other, two male dynamic planets wanting action, but having a certain aggressiveness about it. And I think that with that Sun-Mars square, we do have to be careful how we go. Perhaps with the Moon conjunct Saturn, we feel that something's holding us back, but maybe we want to just push things through. And it's not just the fact we've got Sun-Mars square. We've also got the involvement of Chiron. So we've got Sun opposition Chiron with Mars on the T. So how might that work out? So Sun opposition Chiron, you could say, is the struggle to be different, the struggle to be a maverick, the struggle to somehow go against the grain. And Mars is the resolution. And so we might feel that the only way to resolve the issue and to be really independent individuals and our creativity and our viewpoint is fully respected is perhaps to cause trouble. Mars in Cancer. And so some of us might feel we have to go out of our way to get noticed, even if that causes upset. I'm not quite sure if that's a good idea, but you do have to consider the situation. I don't know what is appropriate. It depends. Though Chiron is, of course, about wounds and healing and people's suffering, and it could be Sun opposition Chiron is about having an awareness of people's suffering. And Mars square that opposition may be the impulse to take a stand, to tell people, to tell the world what we really feel. And we're not too concerned about who we upset. Sometimes things have to be said. So there could be a humanitarian element to the T square. We might want to protest. We might want to write to people in power and be very strong about our opinions, whatever those opinions might be. Also, we have got Venus opposition Uranus. So Uranus, by the way, is exactly on Algol. Exact at the moment. So Venus opposition Chiron. Now, we might say with that Venus opposition Chiron, it doesn't matter that it's Venus. It's just a triggering planet. And so you could say, well, Venus is opposition Algol, Uranus is conjunct Algol. So that might be about just the impulse to perhaps be a rebel. That's one approach. But it might just bring into being Algol experiences. It could represent something unexpected happening. Probably not for us, but more likely in society at large. And certain people are going to be more affected by this aspect than others. I'll be mentioning later in the video, I think Donald Trump could be impacted by this Venus opposition Uranus. I think Benjamin Netanyahu could be influenced by it. Maybe J.D. Vance to a lesser extent. And I always point out that there are these three famous people. Well, one of them's not particularly famous outside the UK, who've got Mars at 26 Leo. That's Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. We've got Donald Trump, of course. And we've got in Britain the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. I don't know what's going on in her life, but I keep mentioning her. Because I see something going on with this Mars in Leo. I think she's got Mars at 26 Leo. And I know that she's perhaps feeling a bit marginalised at the moment. She perhaps doesn't completely relate to the spirit that the British Labour Party are trying to get into, but that might be someone to think about if you're into British politics. Now, the moon here you can see set for New York is at 12 degrees Pisces, conjunct the Saturn. Now, if we relocate that chart to Sydney, Australia, completely different time zone, the moon is at 3 degrees Pisces. So it's much earlier in Pisces, but still that's at noon. So in Australia and New Zealand, the moon will be going into Pisces in the morning. It's going to be a moon in Pisces day. I think in Brisbane, Australia, the moon goes into Pisces today at 5 to 5 in the morning. So I suppose it could be a late Aquarius day if you're up really, really early. And I suppose in New Zealand, what would that be? Something like moon would go into Pisces about maybe 8 in the morning. So it doesn't matter unless you get up really early. Then the moon is certainly going to be in Pisces. Now, I talked about the moon conjunct Saturn when I was talking about what was going on in the world. If you are in Australia and New Zealand, and I say Kamchatka. Someone asked, why do I keep mentioning Kamchatka? Well, it's just a reminder that Russia goes a long way east. And I suppose if you talk, people live in Vladivostok. I'm sure no one's watching this channel if they live in Vladivostok. But, one mustn't forget that. There are a few Russians on this time zone. Anyway, that's why I mention Kamchatka every now and then. And so that moon conjunct Saturn may not be such a major issue if you are in Australia or New Zealand or even in Kamchatka, and at least until the end of the day. Okay, towards the end of the day, some of the issues with moon conjunct Saturn may start to make themselves felt, again, if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But still, the picture is broadly the same wherever you are. We've still got 5, indeed 6, if you count Neptune, 6 planets in water signs, which I think is something quite powerful. So let's now look at the heliocentric picture. Always good to see what's going on if we put the sun at the center of the solar system. And so heliocentrically, we now notice that Mars is within 1 degree of Jupiter. And I do think this is now important. We know that there is a Sun-Mars square today, and we've got a Mars-Jupiter heliocentric conjunction. So that very much emphasizes Mars. There is a lot of energy flying around. People want things to happen. People are not prepared to hold back, and I suppose this may indicate violent events. That's possible, or just people getting angry. I think that's something that we perhaps have to be aware of. Now, I mentioned that Sun is opposition Chiron geocentrically, so by definition, Sun opposition Chiron is the same as Earth conjunct Chiron. And there we have, in the heliocentric chart, we had Earth in Aries conjunct Chiron in Aries. So that underlines the point. We want to be different. We're not prepared to do things according to a particular script. And it may be that we feel obliged to do things differently, perhaps because someone's hurting or a group of people are hurting. There may be a sense of justice and personal responsibility to do something about it. And look at Mercury. Mercury is at 22 Scorpio, so Mercury is moving to an opposition of Uranus. So heliocentrically, we have Mercury opposition Uranus. Geocentrically, we have Venus opposition Uranus. So Mercury opposition Uranus really stirs things up. We have ideas. We want to say what's on our mind. So we don't want to shut up. And this does happen geocentrically when the moon is conjunct Saturn. Moon conjunct Saturn is trying to hold things together, but some of us may not appreciate being told what to do, and we might just feel that we've got to say something regardless. So that's the heliocentric picture, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Monday, October the 14th, 2024. And I'll just change the house system. Make that 0 degrees Aries. There we go. Okay, so these are my forecasts for today, which is Monday, October the 14th. Aries. Aries, you feel that you really want to do something. It's really, really important to you. It feels like now or never. But at the same time, Aries, you believe that the situation isn't right. You're very aware of things and people that are trying to hold you back, and that might make you angry. Though if you do feel that something's holding you back, then do give it some thought. What is really holding you back? Maybe you want to have this idea that another person is holding you back, when in fact it could be you holding yourself back. You just feel that it's not the right time, but you don't want to fully admit it. You don't want to admit that it's you hesitating. You want to blame it on someone else. That is possible. But, with the Sun square Mars, this is a very important aspect, and it's not just Sun square Mars, Sun square Mars, and Mars is square Chiron, and in fact Mars is on the T of a T square, and so there is a powerful motivation here to make things happen. And I suppose that Aries, you shouldn't necessarily do the first thing that comes into your head. You shouldn't be too impulsive, because if you are impulsive, you might quickly find that you run into trouble, that there's resistance. Okay, that resistance could come from you, it could come from other people. And so perhaps the first thing you have to do, Aries, is just stop what you're doing and just feel what's going on. I know that you might not be entirely happy about spending a long time listening to your feelings, but you have to understand the situation that we're living in. There are 6 planets in water signs. It's a very emotional day. Other people's emotions are strong, and they have likes and dislikes. And if you don't take into account other people's emotions, then you're not going to get a sympathetic reception. So Aries, it's a good idea to just stop and pause and listen to your feelings, listen to other people's feelings, and then you can have a better sense of how you want to proceed. And you might then realize, perhaps reluctantly, that a bit of subtlety can go a long way. Perhaps you need to look at your various annoyances, all the things you want to do, and perhaps break it up into segments. First, you consider, who do you need to deal with now? Who's the first person you need to deal with? Where is the conflict? Identify that conflict and deal with it in a calm way. And at the same time, you have your principles. And I think, Aries, today your principles are very strong. And if something's bothering you, then one way or another, you've got to express it. There's no doubt about that. But there are many ways of expressing your feelings. There are many ways of telling the world how angry you are, for example. I don't know whether you're feeling really angry, but there is a sense of injustice. Things are happening which aren't right. Now, continuing on the theme of other people, there is an opposition aspect between Venus and Uranus today. And that Venus-Uranus opposition may say something about the people you have to deal with. They may be feeling themselves quite tense. You may not be the only one feeling tense. Other people might be feeling tense as well. And their behavior and their reactions may not be quite as expected. You might, for example, want instant answers, but other people might be quite set in their ways. They could be quite rebellious, but still set in their ways and very sure of themselves. So again, you have to use your sensitivity to sort of work your way round the situation. Taurus. There is an opposition aspect between Venus and Mars. Venus is an important planet, of course, in the Taurian chart because Venus is the ruler of Taurus. And so with Venus opposition Uranus, you might, in your own way, be quite erratic, because Uranus is a planet of earthquakes. It can happen suddenly with Venus opposition, when Venus is opposition Uranus. And I know that Taurus has a reputation for being quite a stable and down-to-earth sign, but with Venus opposition Uranus, maybe not quite so much at the moment. And you might find yourself being really very stubborn, and your stubbornness may not always be helpful. You also need to watch out for having sort of negative feelings about people that may be based on things that perhaps are beneath you. There may be issues of jealousy. I mean, it may be you being jealous of someone or someone being jealous of you. And if there's any sense of jealousy, try to be aware of your capacity for jealousy. We can all get jealous. I mean, envy is a part of the human condition. We're all envious. We can all fall for it. And so perhaps consider how you might be being envious. But it may be someone being envious of you. And, this is because we got not just Venus opposition Uranus, but Venus is opposition Algol, this fixed star, the head of the demon. I think in a practical sense, when sort of Algol is strongly configured in a chart, it can represent envy, and it can be the victim of envy. And so to look at issues of envy there with this Venus opposition Uranus, Venus opposition Algol, Uranus conjunct Algol, and try to be honest with yourself, and don't be too set in your ways, and try to consider what other people have to say. I mean, if you want to be, I think that you can actually be quite sociable, but in quite a serious way. If you want to be sociable, it has to be done very much on your terms. You're not going to want to just throw yourself into some random party and just go with the flow. It has to be done in a way where you feel completely comfortable. And I suppose fundamentally, Taurus, you do feel that you do have something to say. There's something you want to communicate, and you're perhaps looking for the right moment. And today, I think that you can find the right moment. And perhaps you're going to be helped by the fact that the moon is conjunct Saturn. So moon in conjunct Saturn can be quite a difficult aspect because it forces one to be disciplined and structured. But it may allow you to think about what needs to be done, how you need to get the words out, and getting your timing right. So if you've got a message to deliver, then you need to do it in a very responsible and careful way. And timing is going to be important, and the words you use are also going to be important. Now, one other thing is that Mercury is now moving into Scorpio, so that is a change. And with Mercury moving into Scorpio, Scorpio is your opposite sign, and so Mercury in Scorpio does say something about what other people want, and it may be about someone who says a lot, but in that kind of Scorpio kind of way. Someone who does have something to say, but they are quite serious. And Mercury in Scorpio may actually represent someone new arriving on the scene. Someone perhaps you hadn't seen before, someone you hadn't been aware of before. And it's a person that may be quite different from yourself, because Mercury's in Scorpio, you're a Taurus, but nonetheless someone who is serious, and someone who I think you really could benefit from them if you were to listen to them and converse. But Mercury in Scorpio might not necessarily just be about one person. It's perhaps about you getting involved in serious conversations where everyone is completely honest. It's not about show with Mercury in Scorpio. It's about talking about the things that matter and coming to, hopefully, some important conclusions. Gemini. Mercury is now in Scorpio. It's establishing itself in Scorpio. And from your perspective, I think that is quite an important change. So for some weeks, Mercury has been moving through Libra, and Libra, I suppose, is a fairly easygoing sign. Everything was taking place perhaps on the surface. Things weren't too complicated, at least in terms of how you were talking to people. Then Mercury moves into Scorpio, and Mercury does represent you. It is your ruler, and I suppose when Mercury goes from Libra to Scorpio, the whole way you express yourself may change. I mean, not in a massive way. I mean, you're still a Gemini. We can't change that. But Mercury in Scorpio perhaps makes you more serious and more willing to pause, more willing to listen. And this is a reminder that right now we've got 6 planets in water signs, if you include Neptune, and 5 undiscovered planets. I mean, 5 traditional planets in water signs. So Gemini, do make a special effort to listen to your feelings. I know that Gemini traditionally is not the most emotional sign. Of course, everyone has emotions. Everyone's got the same level of emotional awareness, I suppose. But, sometimes you can neglect the emotional side of things. And I think that with Mercury moving into Scorpio, you can be more emotionally aware than usual. And if you're prepared to listen in a slow and careful way, then I do think that you can benefit. And Mercury moving into Scorpio gives you a certain sense of the way things should be, the way things should be organized. And you might have a powerful sense that now is the time to create some changes. They're the kind of changes that you find boring. You don't really want to do them, but you may actually feel that you have to do it because you're starting to think perhaps about some of your ambitions, some of the things you'd like to be. Maybe you've got a picture of how you'd like to be, but there's a gap. Somehow, if you just look at your everyday life, it's a million miles from how you want to be. And so if you want to make some changes and you want to perhaps have a more comfortable and more organized life, and you want to find that image of a future, then you've got to make changes right now. And those changes might be trivial, they might be boring, but you know it's the right thing to do. And it may be that you have been avoiding something for you could have been avoiding it for years even. And there's always a time, when you've got collected garbage and the mess from the past, there are certain times where you have a chance to deal with it. And those chances don't last so very long. They might last for a couple of weeks. And if you miss that window, the next time you do it, you might be a couple of years older. And so if you feel an impulse to do something useful, to organize your life, to clear up the clutter, then now is perhaps the time to do it. And with Mercury in Scorpio, you can really understand what is holding you back, and clear out the cobwebs. That might be something that you can do. Also, Gemini, while Mercury is moving through Scorpio, it might be a good idea to think about your health and well-being. Geminis can live in their heads. Remember, I'm a Gemini, I've got my sun in Gemini, and they can live in their heads, and they can just forget about the body. The body is just there to serve the brain. I mean, that's perhaps an extreme way of looking at Gemini, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to every Gemini. But with Mercury moving into Scorpio, it's a time when you do need to, or you rather don't need to, but I think you would benefit from thinking about your health and well-being. Where are the areas that you've been neglecting yourself? Maybe you meant to do something 2 years ago, but you didn't, and time passed, and you're just thinking, oh, there's no point, I didn't get it together. But you can get it together. So in terms of your well-being, then there's certainly things you can do. I mean, I suppose you have to ask, well, what can you do? I mean, can one be more specific? Well, I suppose health and well-being have many dimensions, and I suppose you think of the obvious things like health and diet. But I think with Mercury in Scorpio, there is an emotional side to things that perhaps you have been neglecting your emotions, and the way you feel, I suppose, can have an impact on your health, including your physical health. And so perhaps you need to be kinder to yourself and give yourself the ability to, or the opportunity to be able to really sort of tune into what's happening and understanding the world in which you live, and perhaps not being in such a hurry, just pausing, trying to, perhaps just stopping and looking at the beauty of nature. Geminis, they can look at things that are beautiful and they can dissect them and they can split them up and they can turn them into something, well, what's the point? What is the point? I've seen it before. Why do I have to go there in person? I can see it in a photograph. That can be a Gemini. That can be a Gemini approach. But I think being kinder to yourself with Mercury moving into Scorpio might be something you can do. And I don't just say that because it sounds good, so some piece of, New Age garbage. No, I think there is a sense in which you can be kinder to yourself and look after yourself, and perhaps allow the mind and heart to have a greater synchrony with each other. And as far as your future is concerned and your ambitions, I've just talked about being kind to yourself and not feeling there are things that you have to do. Still, we cannot deny that there is a conjunction between the Moon and Saturn, and this Moon-Saturn conjunction, yeah, it can be quite hard. It can be harsh, but from a Gemini viewpoint, it's probably quite motivating. I think that Geminis at the moment do have a strong sense of what they're supposed to be doing, and they do actually have a strong sense of self-discipline. And so perhaps with this self-discipline, you can sort of bring together what is good for you, what is good for your health and well-being, and also what is good for your future, how best to understand your ambitions, and if there are things holding you back or people holding you back, then you can assert yourself. But you don't have to go over the top. You don't have to be angry about it. You can just quietly demonstrate that this is the way you want. And I say demonstrate rather than say. There's no need to get involved in arguments. Yeah, I understand that there are some quite stressful aspects going on today. There's a Sun square Mars, and that might lead some people into arguments, but I don't think it needs to lead Geminis into arguments. Just be very clear about what you want. And yeah, Gemini, I think it is a day when you need to look after yourself. Okay, you don't need to look after yourself. You can look after yourself if you want. Cancer. Cancer, there are a lot of planets in water signs at the moment. We've got 6 planets in water signs, and that's including Neptune. And we got 5 traditional planets plus Neptune. And so from your perspective, I would have said that was a good thing, because Cancer, you are watery. Cancer is a water sign, and so when you've got so much water around you, you feel a certain sense of comfort. You're able perhaps to tune into your feelings, not just your feelings, but other people's feelings. You do have a very good understanding of the emotional environment, and I think it's very unlikely that you're going to be surprised. Yeah, few things are going to surprise you. Even a dog barking. It's not going, because you just understand, and I think that you have a certain capacity to anticipate what people are going to do. You're going to have a good idea about what they're going to do next, and it's just going to be very natural. And at the same time, you're going to be a sort of a good person to have around, because you are in tune with everything. Now, that doesn't mean to say, though, Cancer, that you have to be just passive and reflective. Far from it. There is, after all, Mars is moving through your sign, and we've got Sun square Mars, and that Sun square Mars actually makes you very dynamic. You have a very, very clear sense of, I think, right and wrong. I mean, also because Mars is square Chiron. If something isn't right, you're going to be very clear about it, and if anything happens which is a threat to your security, or a threat to, I suppose, the things you find that are important or even sacred, you will respond very quickly. And so if anyone crosses the line, whatever that line is, whatever Cancerians' red lines are, as soon as someone crosses those lines, you're going to respond, I think, very quickly. And I think you can do it, though, in such a way that doesn't cause World War III. Yeah, Sun square Mars can be very aggressive, but at the same time, with all these planets in water, you'll get plenty of warning. So if something's not going right, or if someone's going too far, or perhaps not far enough, your alarm bells will start to ring, and I think that you'll be able to respond in an appropriate way. And Cancer, it may be the case with this Sun square Mars and Sun opposition Chiron, but that you feel that there comes a point where you have to go out of your way. You have to go out of your way to do something because perhaps you see that something isn't right, or maybe that someone's not being treated well, or just something is not being done properly, or there might be a sense of injustice as well. And you'll see this, and then you will want to respond quickly, and you have the opportunity here to make things better, perhaps for someone, for people who are not being treated well. So there is a humanitarian streak here, I think you've got a humanitarian streak anyway, but I think this humanitarian streak comes out perhaps more than usual. And I don't think you're going to be afraid of doing things differently, perhaps breaking other people's expectations. People do have expectations of you. Perhaps they expect you to do particular things in a particular way, and you, I think, have a chance to surprise them. And finally, I should point out there is a conjunction between the Moon and Saturn. Now, this conjunction between Moon and Saturn for some people might be a bit difficult because it's about having to do things in a particular way, and it's a sense of obligation. But I think this Moon conjunct Saturn can be quite useful for you in terms of relationships, and it may be about an existing relationship, perhaps being able to stabilize something which perhaps in a recent past had got a bit difficult. That may be one aspect of it. Or it might actually be about finding someone new, someone who has a very different perspective from you, someone who can offer you a different view of the world. So I don't know what you're doing today, but be on the lookout for new people who might have some interesting ideas and some interesting perspectives. Leo, we have a square aspect between the Sun and Mars. We also have the Sun making an opposition to Chiron. So the Sun is strong in a sense because of that square, and you yourself may feel that it's a time when maybe you have to take action, that something can't wait. That would be Sun square Mars. And it just may be, though, that you feel that, yes, something has to be done, but you're concerned about whether you've got what it takes. And you may feel that if you were to be too much of an extrovert, if you were to make too much of a fuss, then you might get adverse publicity. So there is a bit of a concern there. But the trouble is, you see, if you feel that something needs to be done and you don't do it, then something might happen anyway, and it might happen in a way that you don't have control over. And so, when you're dealing with astrological symbolism, there is always a choice. Here is Sun square Mars. What does it mean? Well, it could mean that you're minding your own business and something happens that you weren't expecting. You get involved in, I don't know, a confrontation or something that might be negative, and it just happens, and it's not your fault, or it seems not to be your fault. Or you could say, oh, well, there's Sun square Mars. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's act out the symbolism. So you act out the symbolism. You do something today which is dynamic. Might not feel comfortable, but it's just something where you're telling the world that you're alive. You have opinions, you have feelings, and you're going to be very clear about who you are. So by doing that, you're taking control of the symbolism. If you don't take the control of the symbolism, then the symbolism can start working in a chaotic and random way, or apparently random way. And so, Leo, I would perhaps advise you to be very clear about what you're going to do today. And ideally, you would decide that you're going to take one action. It could be more, but just try to focus on one action, which does require a bit of assertiveness, where there is a certain possibility of a conflict, but it's something that you're in control of. And by doing that, I think that you can actually create for yourself a fairly stable day when you are in control. So it's kind of like, if you want to have an uncomplicated day, decide on that action. If you want to have a complicated day where things happen that are out of your control, then maybe just stay in bed. Because if you stay in bed, you're just allowing the universe to come up with all sorts of things that you probably don't want to be involved in. Or, I mean, I suppose if you're in bed, and I suppose some people have to stay in bed, don't they? It depends. So if you are in a situation where you have to stay in bed, then you can still do something. Think of something which is about you being in control, where you can still make a decision about what is going to happen today. Yeah, even if you do choose to stay in bed, or maybe you're forced to stay in bed. I don't know about your situation. And in general, Leo, I do think it is quite a serious day. I think that you're not really in the mood for having fun, because there are more important things to think about, more important things to be worrying about. And I think in that sense, Leo, you have a certain amount of intensity and depth to you. And there might be certain things that you really want to focus on. And I do think that would be a very good thing. And with Sun opposition Chiron, you also have to ask yourself, what makes you different? What makes you the disruptor? Because I think with Sun opposition Chiron, you can be a disruptor. Maybe people have taken something for granted. They've assumed that things can be done in the way they've always been done. Why ask questions? But that's not the way you want it to happen, or at least that's not the way you should want it to happen. You can disrupt things and say, hold on, this isn't the way things should be done. Things should be done differently, and you need to listen to me. So that's it, Leo. It's a day that I don't think is necessarily simple, but I think the most important thing today is to decide how you want to be assertive and what kind of actions you want to take. And these actions should embody, the way you are right now, and they should also be about your individuality. And I think if you do that, and you take control of the symbolism, then not only are you being dynamic and you're having a fortunate impact on the world around you, but you're also, in a sense, protecting yourself from events that might just turn up randomly, and events that might trip you up, because those events are less likely to happen if you're the one in control. Virgo, Mercury is now very much in Scorpio, and with Mercury in Scorpio, I think that you're quite communicative, but not in a trivial way. It's not like you're into sort of gossip and small talk and stuff like that. No, there is a depth there. We've got the kettle and we've got the dog barking. Someone is trying to communicate. And there is a depth to your communication, and you are able to really communicate who you are and what you want. And there's nothing superficial about it. And I think that you're going to be very good at communicating on an emotional level, and you'll be able to pick up on other people's feelings quite quickly. It will be very clear. And at the same time, because of your sensitivity, that may say something about the pattern of your various relationships over the course of the day. It's possible, particularly if you're out and about, that you can meet interesting people quite surprisingly. And as a result of these meetings, you might find that you and other people have much more in common than expected. So do consider that as a possibility, and relationships you're already in might change. I'm thinking particularly of relationships that aren't particularly close, but there might be changes, unexpected changes, and perhaps people realizing that they've got sort of perhaps more in common than expected. Now, one thing we do have today is we have the moon in Pisces, and this continues on the relationship theme, because obviously Pisces is your opposite sign. So moon is in Pisces, certain emphasis on relationships. Moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces, that is perhaps indicative of some kind of responsibility, a feeling that if you are involved in a relationship, that does entail responsibility, and that might be a responsibility that you're comfortable with. But on the other hand, you do kind of feel that certain relationships are getting in the way of your freedom of action, and that might bother you to some extent. But the more you can understand about particular relationships, the better, and understand what they're about. And it's important not to project with moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces. By project, I mean thinking that your freedom of action is being constrained by another person, when in fact what is actually constraining you is your own concerns, your own worries, your own inhibitions. They're the real things holding you back. And if someone appears to be holding you back, just ask yourself, is this really true? Or is this just a fiction that maybe you've been creating? Though moon conjunct Saturn, it is about stability, and I think that certain relationships can be made more stable. So if a relationship has been difficult in the past and you want to continue with it, then perhaps a moon conjunct Saturn will enable you to create some order, though in the process you don't want to give too much away. And it's important that there is a balance, and particularly in terms of power. And I suppose in any one-to-one relationships, in any one-to-one relationship, whoever it's with, there is some danger that the other party is the one who has most of the power. There's a danger. It's not for sure going to happen, but that is a possibility. Something you do need to be aware of. So, in terms of relationships, always monitor the power balance. And if the power balance seems to be getting out of control, it seems to be moving out of balance, then you perhaps have to step in and perhaps start to assert yourself. Libra, Venus is obviously your ruler, and it is opposition Uranus. So this Venus opposition Uranus is something that you do need to take into consideration. So with Venus making an aspect to Uranus, there may be a sense where you may be feeling a little bit tense, or You may feel that something has to happen, or you may be concerned that something might happen. So it's going to be, I think, quite difficult for you to relax. And possibly the best way of dealing with this is to be sort of honest and upfront, at least with yourself, to be working out, what really is bothering you. What is the area of your life where you feel you might have to face perhaps an unpleasant surprise, and just be absolutely honest about it and just confront it. And that might be a way of dealing with it, because if you're feeling tense, it's a good idea to find out what the source of this tension is. I mean, it's better for yourself and it's better for everyone else. Now, this Venus opposition Uranus is across the sort of finance axis of your chart. And so there may be a financial dimension to this. Venus is, it's not particularly well placed in Scorpio and opposition Uranus. In fact, Venus is opposition the fixed star Algol, because Uranus is exactly conjunct the fixed star Algol. So there may be things connected with money that are problematic. Now, that might be about your finances, or it might be about other people's attitude to money. Sort of other people may be taking money rather seriously, and because they're taking money seriously, perhaps too seriously, too obsessively, this is causing problems. And I suppose you've got the old adage that money is the root of all evil. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, is it? Money, I suppose there's a case for that, isn't it? But if money is the root of all evil on any day, it's perhaps going to be today. Money could be a problem. And it's not necessarily about your attitude to money. It may also be about other people's attitude to money. And don't assume that money is not a motivator. It might not be a motivator to you, but some people may be motivated by it even when it comes to very small amounts of money. It may amaze you how people can do things which are very extraordinary for the sake of a few dollars. So that's something that I think has to be borne in mind as you move through the day. And if you want to have a sort of a pleasant day, if you want things to work to plan, then I think it's actually going to be important that you have a plan. You have a plan. You're certainly aware that things can go wrong. You're aware that other people can be a law unto themselves. But as far as you're concerned, I think it would be good if you had a plan. You decided, broadly speaking, how you wanted to go through the day. And if you can create some kind of structure, not a completely rigid structure, but just a structure just to say that you can, see things through hour by hour as Monday progresses. And so, if you have a distraction, you'll be able to get the distraction in perspective, and you won't be allowing people to take up too much of your time. So I think that would be quite useful. Now, there is a sense, Libra, in which you feel that you do need to be assertive, that you feel that you have got something not just to offer, there's something you want to present. You have insights, you want to present them, and you kind of want to do it now. And the sun is moving through your sign, and it's making a square to Mars. And so with the sun square Mars, that really does underline the point that you have actually got quite a lot of energy, and that sun square Mars may be quite insistent. There may be an insistency that you actually go and do certain things, that they have to be done. And you won't take kindly, I don't think, to resistance. So if there's something you really want, then I think you're going to feel that you have to get it. And then the question is, how do you go about it? And as far as possible, you use your Libran charms. Your Libran charms can go a long way in terms of getting what you want, but there just may come a point right at the end where you have to deliver a demand. Perhaps you can use your Libran charms to sort of, I don't know, soften up the other party, and then you can finally make your demand right at the end, and then you can get what you want. I think it is important that you do get what you want today. If it matters, if you've got something that really needs to be done, you've got a particular set of goals for yourself, it's just very important that you are able to see it through, and you shouldn't be totally concerned about hurting people's feelings. You may be able to get what you want without hurting people's feelings, without getting involved in a confrontation, but there is an aspect between the Sun and Sun square Mars, and Sun square Mars, it can be a difficult aspect, and it can be a bit aggressive, but I somehow think if you handle it the right way, that things should be okay. Scorpio, the Sun is square Mars. I was just telling Libra that the Sun was square Mars, and of course Mars is an important planet for Scorpios, and so when with the Sun square Mars, I think that you're going to have a strong sense of yourself and what you want to do, and you could get angry. I mean, that is how Sun square Mars can work. I mean, I think it could be quite an angry day for many people, regardless of their sign. And for you, there are things that could really irritate you, and matters would be made worse if you kept them to yourself. There is a certain temptation, I think, to keep things to yourself, not to discuss what is annoying you, what is upsetting you, but I think that if you do keep things to yourself, then what might happen is that things might start to fester and get out of control. So I think you have to be honest about that. And if you find yourself getting annoyed, then you're going to have to do something about it, and you're going to have to take concrete action. And you have to decide what action is required, but you certainly shouldn't take the view that, whatever it is, it can wait until tomorrow. I don't think that is a view that you can realistically take. I think you do have to be honest about it. Sometimes the moment is important, and you really need to make the most of the moment. But I think matters are going to be helped, or at least mitigated, by the fact that Mercury is moving into Scorpio. And Mercury is now in the 2nd degree of Scorpio, at least New York time. And that means that with Mercury in the 2nd degree of Scorpio, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's New York time. The point is Mercury's in Scorpio. That's not really a particularly relevant piece of information. But you are able to, I think, communicate very well with sensitivity and subtlety, and you can, I think in most cases, you can tell people what you want and how you want things to be in a way that is not particularly intrusive, and people will understand you. And with Mercury in Scorpio, and with all these planets in water signs, Scorpio is a water sign. There are 6 planets in water signs if we include Neptune. So that does give you an incredible amount of sensitivity. And I think with that sensitivity, you'll be able to get your message across, get your demands across, but in a way that is subtle enough to get a sympathetic reception. So yeah, Scorpio is a sign that is subtle, and I think that your subtlety can be very useful, and it's about having things that things you want to happen. You don't have to hide them, but at the same time, you don't have to act in such a way that you cause an argument, because it is quite an argumentative day for all of us with Sun square Mars. So Scorpio, in many respects, it's just about handling the prevailing energies in the right way. One other thing, Venus is opposition Uranus, and Venus is actually in quite a difficult position because Venus is in Scorpio. Okay, it's nice in a way that Venus is in Scorpio because Venus is in your sign, but Venus is opposition Algol. Uranus is conjunct Algol. Remember, Algol is a fixed star, the head of the demon, and that may say something about relationships. With Venus opposition Uranus, relationships could be a bit of a trouble spot. And I think certain relationships perhaps should be avoided. Perhaps, dealing with new relationships, people who've let you down in the past. Other people, people might respect you. They might want to get close to you, but that doesn't mean that you should want to get close to them. And some people may just be more trouble than they're worth, and at least for today and perhaps tomorrow. I mean, I'm not saying this is a permanent situation, but in terms of other people, I think you should be wary. Though, there could be surprise events, people turning up unexpectedly, doing things unexpectedly. Maybe that will be fine. But probably it's best, Scorpio, to err on the side of caution. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, your inclination, I think, would be to keep a fairly low profile today. I think that you probably feel that it's a complicated world out there, and you don't have to be seen and heard by everyone. So that wariness may well be justified, and I think one reason why the situation is complicated, or maybe more complicated than usual, is because that we've got so many planets in water signs. We've got 6 planets in water signs. We've got Mars, Mercury. Mars is in Cancer, Mercury, Venus are in Scorpio, Moon, Saturn, and Neptune are in Pisces. And from a Sagittarian perspective, it just may be a little bit overwhelming, and you're dealing with just too much emotion. And Sagittarius, is a fire sign; it's not a water sign, and it just may feel that you're just not in your element, and it's just best to play safe. Yet there is a trine aspect between the Sun and Jupiter. So that Sun-Jupiter trine, it's a really nice aspect. And it's not particularly introspective, and it does give you a boost. And although I understand you might be wary of other people, other people can really be a joy. They can be. If people have been happy and pleasant in the past, and they can be happy and pleasant in the future, and the right friends can really make your day. Yes, you have to choose your friends carefully. You perhaps need to hang out with people who just are on your wavelength, who have the same aspirations, who have the same goals, who want the same things. And if you find the right people to be with, then I think that you can really have a great day, and you don't have to be a hermit. Although I do understand that there may be times when you feel that you want to be a hermit. And, this concept of Sagittarius as a hermit, I mean, this is perhaps something I've been talking about. Every now and then I say it when I've been dealing with Sagittarius. And I think the reason is that since the beginning of March, I think since I think it was March 2023, Saturn went into Pisces, and I know that was an important event, and I know that was a long time ago, 18 months ago, more than 18 months ago, that Saturn has been moving through Pisces. But, Pisces is quite an introspective sign from a Sagittarian view, and so Saturn is always there. And so whenever anything aspects that Saturn, that you get a reminder. And so with Moon conjunct Saturn today, you get a reminder that it is a time when you are perhaps more introspective than usual, when a lot of your work, I mean, when I say work, I mean your not just sort of material work, but your sort of spiritual and inspirational work does happen in your own space. That's where it should be happening. And perhaps with Moon conjunct Saturn, there's just a reminder of that your own space really is important. But, we do have, as I've just been saying, Sun trine Jupiter. There are things going on out there which I think that you need to take advantage of. Capricorn, you are, I think, in quite a good position, really. I mean, for one thing, Capricorn, you're able to express yourself very well at the moment. Not necessarily in a particularly dynamic and exciting way, but certainly people seem to get the message, and they do understand, and on an emotional level you appear to be fairly aware, so you're able to tailor your message to fit your audience, and you know what to say to particular people, and I think there'll be no problems being understood. And I also think that in terms of who's in control, I think in general it's you that's going to be in control over the course of the day. You're the one that is going to be setting the pace, and things will tend to be done your way. And I think part of the reason for that is that you would just give the impression of being a sort of a fairly serious and responsible person who can be trusted. Now, an aspect we do have today is Sun trine Jupiter. Now, that Sun trine Jupiter is in air signs, and it's may not feel completely easy, that Sun trine Jupiter, because it just may feel itself to be perhaps an alien opportunity, an opportunity that you get that you're perhaps not ready to take advantage of, but probably you should be taking advantage of it. And I think that Sun trine Jupiter actually gives you a balance. Yes, you are a serious person, but you're not serious in the sense of being boring. You're serious in the sense of, I think, having something to offer. And I think that Sun trine Jupiter does give the impression that you have something to offer. You have something to offer that is quite interesting, and I think that people are prepared to work on it. So if you want people to do things, or you suggest that people do things, then I think that in most cases they'll be happy to oblige, because you are someone to trust. And if you've got any ideas, then you should discuss them. And, I know that many Capricorns are not entirely comfortable with the concept of ideas. Ideas perhaps seem a little bit of a waste of time. But, because you've got to think about action in the material world. But ideas should not be neglected. And I think that your ideas, some of your ideas at least, are very good. And people are prepared to listen to them. And they're able to put them into practice. So in that sense, Capricorn, I think that you have an opportunity to adopt something of a leadership position, and yeah, you've got something to contribute. And while it may not be the most fascinating day this year, it's still a day when you do have something to contribute, and if you believe that something is right, then you're almost certainly correct. Though I suppose I should point out there is a square aspect between Sun and Mars. It is exact today, and I suppose with the Sun square Mars may represent a disagreement. Someone who actually disagrees with what you're trying to present, and I don't think this disagreement need be a big problem. And it just requires you to understand why someone is disagreeing with you. As soon as you understand why someone is disagreeing with you, what the basis of this disagreement actually is, then I think that you'll be able to resolve it. And this takes us back to what I was saying at the beginning of this piece on Capricorn, that emotionally you're quite aware. And that really is helping you in the way you communicate. You can communicate. That back and forth communication is taking place in an environment of emotional awareness, and if there's any resistance, I think you'll be able to pick up on it quite quickly, and you'll be able to find a way around it. Aquarius, we have a trine aspect between the Sun and Jupiter, and Sun and Jupiter both in air signs, Jupiter in Gemini, Sun in Libra, so that has a fortunate impact on your sign. You have a feeling that there's just a general sense of flow, and I think that it's also quite fortunate, this Sun-Jupiter trine. You get a sense of what you can do, and you can take your creativity and perhaps move it to a new level. And maybe you can move it to a new level by listening to what other people are saying, getting feedback. So do be ready actually to take a little bit of criticism. I don't think it is going to be criticism. It's more about comment. And what you're looking for is people who have a view of the world that may be very different from your own, who can give you an idea about what is possible. And I think that is very important, to get a sense of what is possible, because I think in many cases more is possible than you realize. And you're going to get assistance from the fact that Mercury is moving into Scorpio. So with Mercury moving into Scorpio, that means that you're able to, I think, communicate your message very well. And what is the best way to communicate your message with Mercury in Scorpio? With Mercury in Scorpio, it's to do it in a way that is quite emotional, but is quite subtle. And you don't have to blurt things out. You don't have to say that these are things you want and you want them now, and you don't have to be crass about it. You can very subtly bring people round to your way of thinking. And being a communicator is not just about someone who is talking a lot. You should judge communication by the results, and by showing emotional sensitivity, then you can certainly get the message across. And emotional sensitivity is just important for everyone at the moment, regardless of their sign, because there are so many planets in water signs, and Aquarius is not known for being super emotional, but by tuning into whatever emotions you have and tuning into your own emotional sensitivity. That means that you're going to be able to really get your message across, and you do actually have quite a powerful message. There's something you're aware of that is quite unusual. It may almost be sort of revolutionary in its own way, and I think this is something that you're going to want to talk about, and you're going to want to bring it into awareness. So I suppose awareness starts with being aware in your own mind. So you're aware in your own mind of something, and once you're aware of something in your own mind, something could be quite radical, could be quite revolutionary, then you're in a position to make other people aware. Pisces, it's got to be a good day, doesn't it? I would have thought. I mean, Pisces, you've got the moon moving into your sign, and you've got the moon making a conjunction to Saturn in your sign, and we've got 6 planets in water signs, and Pisces, you're a water sign, so everything is kind of working your way. I don't think there are any surprises, because you can just feel your way through. And that moon conjunct Saturn, not everyone is going to appreciate it, but that moon conjunct Saturn does take place in your sign, and that allows you to take your feelings, take your emotions, and it allows you to sort of kind of take control of them. You can control your feelings in such a way that you're not repressing them. You are almost harnessing them, and you're just very aware of the emotional environment in which you're living, and you can use it to make your presence felt. And that is certainly something you can do. And you are going to be taken seriously. You could, I suppose, take things too far with that moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces. You may perhaps assert more control than you need to assert. We think about emotions, at least, me as a Gemini, I think about emotions as being perhaps something rather alien, but from your perspective, Pisces, it's not alien at all. And so, you control, what does they say? You control the horizontal, you control the vertical, you are the one in control, because it's a very emotional environment. And because you control the horizontal and the vertical, then that does mean that you can set the pace and you can set the environment. And that means that, to an extent, people have to do things your way, whether it be your friends or your family or workmates. It's you're there making things happen. And so I suppose you have to make sure, Pisces, that you don't abuse that power, because you do have a lot of power. You might not feel like you've got a lot of power, but actually you do. And so consider, Pisces, what kind of effects you're trying to have. And it is possible, if you're the kind of Pisces that that enjoys power. Some Pisceans do enjoy power. If you're that kind of Pisces, there is some danger, that you take things too far, and there's a certain danger, I suppose, that power could be abused. So you do need a certain sense of responsibility here, and you need to do what is right. But overall, I just think that right now you are so strongly placed that you don't actually have to try too hard. You don't have to push things. And you should, I think, sort of be tolerant. And, with Mercury is moving into Scorpio. And with Mercury moving into Scorpio, I think that gives you an opportunity to perhaps learn some new things. You don't know everything. You're very aware that you don't know everything. And there are some things you perhaps need to start to bring into your life over the next couple of weeks, certain ideas that they're important, but in the past you've kind of neglected them. But with Mercury and Scorpio, you can start to work with them, and so that means it's just important that you're not complacent. Sometimes the reason people try too hard to assert their own power is because they know there are gaps in their knowledge. There are things that they don't know, and so they kind of have to compensate. So it may be, Pisces, that rather than worry too much about what other people are doing, how much control you have, maybe you should just take some time to really try to understand something new. And it's the kind of thing that you always knew that it was important, perhaps some area of knowledge, but you'd neglected it. But now over the next few weeks you can make up for lost time. And so perhaps you need to consider how much you want to know, say between now and Mercury going into Sagittarius. I think Mercury goes into Sagittarius. When does Mercury go into Sagittarius? I think that's kind of on the 2nd of November. So in terms of knowledge and ideas, perhaps you should ask yourself, what do you want to learn? What do you want to know between now and November the 2nd? And so over the next few weeks, there's a good opportunity there to expand your awareness of things that you right now, I'm not saying you're going to be ignorant of them, but you just know there's a gap. You could know more. And so there is definitely something you can do there. But, overall, Pisces, you have a lot of control today. You're very much in your element. And so, things look good, but things could always be better. And if you want things to be better, then it may just be about learning about new things. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And I now want to turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 19, which is approach. So approach is about other people, I suppose, or it may be, I suppose, about a situation in which we feel that we are getting close to or closer to, and we've decided that perhaps that now is the right time, and we perhaps need to send feelers out. Now, I don't know what this is approach to. It depends on your situation. It may be you're approaching one person. It may be a group of people. It may be you're just making a change in your life where you've decided that you've perhaps been too isolated and that you need to get involved with something. It may not be about one person. It may be about a society or a group, or I don't know if it's in politics. I suppose it could be a political party. Whatever you're interested in. I suppose it could be a religion. I don't know, or a church. Whatever you are approaching, it does seem to be the right thing to do. So if you're contemplating an approach, then you need to get it right. And the I Ching is saying it is right, but there may be a sense in which it is optional, because the top line moves, and the top line gives us the idea, maybe, that you have in the past made a decision to retreat, that you didn't need to get involved with certain people, certain situations. You'd withdrawn from the world, and you were quite happy where you are, and I suppose the image that I Ching likes to give is perhaps of some holy man or a sage who has gone through life, done this, done that, and that's enough, and has just perhaps withdrawn to their cave or their mountaintop, and you may feel a bit like that. But it may be a situation where you have to return, where you have to sort of come back into the, into the social milieu, and that maybe just feel that that's something that you actually want to do. And when you start to make this approach, things may not be perfect. We've got Sun square Mars today, and the I Ching is actually saying that in certain cases a little bit of force may be required. So if you do start to get involved with people, you may find that things are not perfect, and there may be a sense of disappointment because you realize that perhaps people are doing things wrong, and that might mean that you do have to apply a bit of leadership. And so do consider that. If something is not right, you very much have to say something about it, and then you have to consider, how do you progress? How do you actually treat other people, and can indeed they be trusted? And that takes us to the second hexagram, which is because we've got two lines moving, and this transitions to hexagram number 27, which is the corners of the mouth. You can see the corners of the mouth. You've kind of got a mouth there. And one way of looking at the corners of the mouth is to say, well, you could say that it's like a sort of a hamster with bulging cheeks. You get the idea of consuming too much. So it could be that as you start to get closer to people, there starts to be a lot to take on board. There's a lot to deal with. There's a lot to work out. And it may just take some time to digest it all. And we don't want to take on too much too quickly. I mean, that's one approach to the corners of the mouth, which is indicated, that's Greg Winkup in his book on I Ching. The Wilhelm translation, 27, the corners of the mouth, has a different view. At least I think it's different, at least my understanding of it. And the corners of the mouth is actually about the process we make, the process we use to decide whether or not someone can be trusted. So remember, the previous hexagram was approach. So we're deciding to get back into society. We're getting closer to people. We're perhaps starting to take on a position of leadership, or we may feel that's the right thing to do. But who are these people we're approaching? Can they be trusted? And so with the corners of the mouth, the Wilhelm translation advises us to look at what people are eating, because the corners of the mouth can be about food, and it can be about words, it can be about talking, but what are people eating? So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about what they are literally eating. It's what do people feed on, because different people feed on different things. Different people are nourished by different things. Some people are nourished by power. They want power. They want control. Other people are nourished by money. Other people are nourished by, I don't know, doing charitable deeds. Everyone is nourished by something. And so if you're working out whether or not to trust someone, whether or not to approach someone, ask yourself, what nourishes them? What really makes them happy? And it perhaps is about what they talk about, what they seem to be obsessed about, the subjects they keep returning to in conversation. It's not just about conversation; it's what they're doing. Where do they keep going? And just observe the pattern of their behavior. If someone, for example, likes to go on holiday 6 times a year, then that might give you an idea about what nourishes them, what is important to them. That might indicate, for example, you're trying to look for some kind of cooperation in terms of what you're trying, maybe something you're trying to do in your community, and you're getting cooperation from someone you appear to be, but you also know that someone goes on holiday 6 times a year. This maybe suggests that this person's, in terms of what nourishes them, it's not actually their immediate community. They like to just, I don't know, go on cruises, whatever they need to do. That their priorities are different. Or if someone is talking about money all the time, yeah, maybe it's money that really matters to them. And I mean, that's not to say that you should reject someone because you have a realization that they're nourished by, something like money or mindless enjoyment. It's just something that you need to be aware of. So that's the I Ching, and I now want to go back to the astrology, and I just want to start by looking at very quickly some of the main things happening today. In particular, we've got this Sun square Mars, and we've got Venus opposition Uranus. So with the Venus opposition Uranus, let's just have a look at it. So set for noon, you can see that Venus is in Scorpio, and there's Venus in Scorpio opposition Uranus, and Uranus is exactly conjunct Algol. I mean, it's exactly conjunct. Yeah. By the way, Jupiter is exactly conjunct Bellatrix, the female warrior, today as well. And so Venus can be a trigger. And it may not matter the fact that Venus is a planet of relationships. Or, it could be, if it was Mercury at 26 Scorpio, maybe Mercury's, whether it's Mercury, Mercury, we wouldn't worry about whether it's a planet of communication or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, we've got Venus opposition Uranus. So if someone has got Uranus aspecting an important planet, and when we've got Venus aspecting it as well, we might expect something to happen. And so looking at Donald Trump's chart, I'm sorry, I think I need to stop talking about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. I need to have a break from them. I was actually thinking of doing a final video. I would call it my final word on the election, and then just not mention the two, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, for 3 weeks. I think that might be a good idea, but maybe I won't be able to help myself. But turning to Donald Trump's chart, and what's happening today. So you can see that Trump, there is Trump's Mars at 2647 Leo, and you can see that Uranus is square his Mars. It's been square his Mars on and off for a long time now. Uranus is conjunct Algol squaring his Mars. So in general, this is a time, he's already had 2 assassination attempts while Uranus has been square his Mars. I mean, there could be another assassination attempt. Maybe it could be more. I'm guessing there are people out there who are trying to kill him. And I suppose he's being protected. He's under a lot of, there's a lot of protection there for him. But Venus is now triggering this. So Venus is opposition Uranus, and so Venus is square his Mars. Now you could say Venus square Mars, maybe issues with women, or that is a possibility, but it may have nothing to do with Venus. It just may be that Venus just highlights the fact that he's got Uranus square his Mars. So if I was advising Donald Trump, I would have said over the next few days he has to be careful, as always. I suppose he always has to be careful, but it seems to be that Uranus conjunct Algol square his Mars seems to be highlighted at the moment. And we might say something similar to his to his vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance has Uranus fairly close to the square of his ascendant, and so he's going to have Venus square his ascendant over the next few days. So maybe J.D. Vance has to watch what he says. But I suppose everyone's a target now, aren't they? So security does matter. And then there's Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu, we always know that something's happening in the world of Benjamin Netanyahu, and but just a reminder, Benjamin Netanyahu has his Mars at 2645 Leo, and if we compare the two charts, Benjamin Netanyahu and today's chart, there's his Mars, 2645 Leo. Uranus is at 2631 Taurus, squaring his Mars, and so Venus, he has got Venus square his Mars. So I don't know what Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be up to Monday, Tuesday, but I would guess that he would be up to something. And with its Mars, it is about, I assume that's something about war and bombing things. I don't know. I suppose Israel's always doing something, but over the next couple of days, I think that Venus opposition Mars does highlight Benjamin Netanyahu's horoscope. Then there's also, if you're interested in the UK, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, she has her Mars at 26 Leo, and so Venus is going to be square her Mars. Uranus, she's got conjunct Algol opposition her Mars. That might be someone you want to look at, see what's going on in her life. And finally, I want to look at the horoscope of Alex Salmond, who died on Saturday. And so, if you don't know, Alex Salmond was a prominent British politician. He was First Minister of Scotland, and he was head of the Scottish National Party. He had some legal trouble a few years ago where he was accused of, some sexual indiscretion, and he was acquitted. And he left the Scottish Nationalist Party, and he formed his own party. I think it was called ALBA. And he was prominent, not just in terms of politics, but he was always on TV. He always had something to say, and he was a very good communicator. And I think people liked him. I mean, I don't know, they might not necessarily have liked him, but he was always liked him. But he did come over very well on TV. So it's a shame that he went and died, and he died in North Macedonia. I think he was on a lecture trip there. But here is Alex Salmond's chart, and what is interesting about Alex Salmond's chart, and it's kind of a reminder not to go too over the top with the elements. He has no personal planets. He has, no undiscovered planets in positive signs. He's got Neptune in Libra, he's got Pluto in Leo, but he's got pretty much no fire except for Pluto in Leo. He's got no air except for Neptune in Libra, and he's got Cancer rising. So in his case, that's not the point. I would be inclined to say if someone has got no air, no fire, you would have think that they would not be perhaps an effective communicator. But that shows that it's just a massive generalization. We need to be always careful about making generalizations, particularly about having no fire, no air. Clearly he was someone who was very dynamic. He got reasonably close to getting Scotland independent. There was the referendum in 2014. His leadership, I think, passed on to Nicola Sturgeon, who just simply was not at his level. And I think that that was one of the reasons I think he left the Scottish Nationalist Party. But it was close, the referendum in 2014. And he is someone who has a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, a pretty close Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Now, one interpretation of Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is about the concept of freedom. So if you've got Jupiter-Uranus conjunction it is about freedom, and different people express that in different ways. But in his case, it was freedom for Scotland. And of course, Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was in Cancer, and Cancer is the sign that rules Scotland. You look at William Lilly, Christian Astrology, 17th, written in the 17th century. You look at the countries related to Cancer, you'll find Scotland, and there is this special relationship, I think, with Cancer, with Cancer and Scotland. Scotland's greatest hero, Robert the Bruce, who defeated the English. He was a Cancerian. He defeated the English at the Battle of Bannockburn, and during the Battle of Bannockburn, the sun was in the sign Cancer, and with Robert the Bruce, a famous story about Robert the Bruce was that he saw this spider. I don't know whether it's true; it's probably not true. Constantly trying to make its web, and it kept trying, and so Robert the Bruce, having been defeated by the English in earlier skirmishes or whatever, he saw this spider constantly trying to make its web as an inspiration to just keep trying. And I myself see spiders as being a Cancerian animal. They're very sensitive. They look after themselves. They find their web. They find a corner in the room where they want to hang out in. So that seems to link. And maybe if you're a Scottish nationalist, you want independence for Scotland, the spider image is perhaps quite important for you. You keep trying. You don't give up just because you've lost a referendum. You keep going. So there is that association with Cancer in Scotland. Of course, Cancer is a sign which is associated with clans, and of course Scotland is very clannish. Scottish politics is incredibly clannish, as far as I understand it. But it's so fitting that someone who has Jupiter and Uranus in Cancer rising, independence, freedom for Scotland, and so I think that Jupiter-Uranus, I think, says so much about him, and Jupiter-Uranus conjunction says so much about him and his ideals. And perhaps he was also already able to express that Jupiter-Uranus when he came over in front of the TV cameras. He came over as a sort of fairly sort of larger-than-life person, but he wasn't a sort of a firebrand. I mean, he wasn't like George Galloway. He was always very reasonable and knowledgeable, and he kind of made sense. And he had, and he's got, if you take Placidus house systems, he's got Moon-Mars conjunction in Pisces on the midheaven. I mean, from a career perspective or ambition perspective, Mars in Pisces up there looks to me to be pretty good. It's in mixed reception with Jupiter. Mars is in the sign of Jupiter. Jupiter is in the sign of in the exaltation of Cancer. So, and of course Mars rules the watery triplicity, day and night, and so that is a strong Mars. Now, as far as his death is concerned, I mean, I looked at the stuff going on at the time of his death, and I'm not saying that I really found anything particularly spectacular. Now, he died in, well, there's one thing I found spectacular, or no, not super spectacular, but I'll just come on to this in a moment. But he died in Macedonia, so I suppose one could relocate his chart to Macedonia. I mean, to North Macedonia. So he died in the town of Ohrid in Macedonia. So if you relocate his chart to Ohrid, Macedonia, where he died, that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is fairly close to the ascendant. It's that much closer to the ascendant. And of course, he had Jupiter-Uranus opposition Chiron. And so I suppose Chiron, Jupiter, of course, that Jupiter-Uranus opposition Chiron may say something about his disappointment as well. Jupiter Uranus in Cancer is about the desire for independence for Scotland, and Chiron is that sense of rejection and the wound that Chiron, that independence has not been achieved. But that Jupiter Uranus conjunction is just that much closer. If you set his chart for Ohrid in Macedonia, where he did die. So those are a few thoughts about Alex Salmond's chart. Now, what we had over the weekend, or not over the weekend, remember I said that on Monday we had a Sun-Mars. Sorry, let's just go back to his natal chart. So on Monday we have a very exact Sun-Mars square. And this Sun-Mars square was potentially having an impact on Alex Salmond. So let's just compare Alex Salmond's chart with roughly what's happening on Monday. Remember, he died on the Saturday, so the Sun and Mars will be a little bit earlier. Okay, let's actually look at his death chart. So that's a chart of his death. I think he died around. He suddenly became unconscious at around 3:30 in the afternoon. So let's just compare Alex Salmond with his death chart. So at the time of his death, Mars had just crossed his ascendant, and the Sun there was a Sun-Mars square hitting his ascendant. Now, that may be about what his death was about. Now, you could say, well, it's not exact. The Sun was a degree off, Mars was 2 degrees off. Now, the thing about Scottish birth times is that I think in Scotland, unlike England has a birth time, I believe, for twins, but not for if you're born on a birth certificate, but not if you're born if you're not a twin. In Scotland, I believe the birth time is always on the birth certificate. That's why Scottish births, if you're born in Scotland, there will be a birth certificate with a time available. And so for Alex Salmond, it says he's born at 4:30 p.m. Now, 4:30 p.m. strikes me as being rather a round number. I mean, he could have been born at 4:35 p.m. So it may be that his ascendant was a little bit later. It could have been 19 or 20. So it does seem that in Alex Salmond's case, you had the Mars was square. Mars was close to his ascendant. The Sun was fairly close to the square of his ascendant, and perhaps Chiron. So over the weekend of his death, there was a Sun-Chiron opposition, which was square his ascendant, and perhaps it's fitting also that that he had Chiron on his descendant. He had Chiron in the 7th house when he was born, but Chiron was exactly on his fairly close to his descendant if you relocate his birth to Ohrid, where he died. So so what happened is he decided to go to Ohrid, a place where he had Chiron fairly close to his 7th house cusp, and that meant that that's where he died. And so I do think that Sun opposition Chiron square Mars was probably what killed him, or at least is the symbol of what killed him. I mean, it's not that the planets caused him to die, it's that there is a correlation, if you like, between his death and the position of the planets at that time. Okay, that's Alex Salmond. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like this video. If you are not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks very much for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.